King's Dominion, located at Dawesville, Virginia, is home to 13 roller coasters, ranging from the smallest to one of the most intense roller coasters in the world. I've been going to this park for 13 years, and here's my ranking of all the coasters in 2024. Starting the ranking off at number 13, we have the smallest coaster in the park, the Great Pumpkin Coaster. This coaster is obviously meant for babies and toddlers, so it will not be appreciated as much by teenagers and adults. It's very small. It's like an 8-foot drop into like 2 bunny hops, and then it's a turn, and that's basically the extent of the ride. Taking the number 12 spot, we have the other kiddie coaster in the park, Woodstock's Express. This coaster is a good step up from the Great Pumpkin Coaster for any kid that wants to ride something a little bit bigger, but nothing too intense like Anaconda or Racer 75. So if you're looking for something a little bit bigger, this is definitely a great coaster to ride, and it's very fun. Taking the number 11 spot is Anaconda. This coaster, in my opinion, is just bad. Other than the first drop and the first loop, everything is painful, boring, slow, and just forceless. The trim brakes slow it down way too much, and from that point forward, you're basically stopped, and then it just barely keeps going. It makes the corkscrews so forceless and not fun. They really just slowed it down way too much. And that is the main reason why this coaster is so low on my ranking list. Taking the number 10 spot at King's Dominion is Apple's Apple, King's Dominion's Wild Mouse. Even though Apple's Apple is a cloned roller coaster, it is one of the better clones in the fact that it has a first drop. After that, though, it goes into the normal Wild Mouse turns, and it's basically that for the rest of the ride, other than like 1 or 2 more little drops, but nothing forceful. Really, it's just those turns, and that's the extent of the ride. Taking the number 9 spot at King's Dominion is one of the more unique coasters in the park, Reptilian. This coaster is really fun and especially great for getting views of the construction on the new B&M Wing coaster coming 2025. Obviously, since this is a bobsled coaster, there is no first drop, really, or airtime hills, because that would be dangerous. So it's really just turns till you get to the ground. So it does get a little repetitive, but it's still a great coaster, and I definitely recommend riding this coaster. It is not one you would want to miss out on, because it is unique. There's not many of these out there. So if you want to get on this, definitely hit it early in the morning, because it will get a long line. Taking the number 8 spot is the oldest still operating coaster at King's Dominion, Racer 75. This coaster will be celebrating its 50th anniversary next year, which is insane. This coaster has been operating since the opening day of King's Dominion in 1975. And for being so old, this coaster still runs well and is smooth. This is a great coaster, especially fun since it's dueling. It's a good layout, and it's just an all-around great experience when you ride this coaster. I definitely recommend riding it, and do not expect a rough ride. For 50 years, this thing is a very, very smooth wooden Philadelphia Toboggan Company roller coaster. Taking the number 7 spot in my coaster ranking is the newest ride in the park, Tumbili. The only reason I rank this coaster so high is because it's the only coaster in the park that gives me a nervous feeling going up the lift hill. If it wasn't for that, it would probably be lower because it gets very long lines and it's just too short for such a long line. It's not usually worth the wait. Taking the number 6 spot is Backlot Stunt Coaster. This is a fun family coaster. Starts off with a very nice launch into an upward helix that actually makes you gray out a little bit. It then goes into a kind of boring rest of the ride. It's just kind of very mild and tame little turns. And, I mean, it's still a great coaster. The airtime hill pulls a little bit of floater airtime, but nothing too much. I will say, I've been very disappointed by this coaster in the past few years, as the animatronics and sounds and fire stopped working. There used to be police cars with sirens going. The helicopter used to make noises. It was shooting a gun. There was explosions. There was fire. And that just doesn't happen anymore, and it's just disappointing. Even the lights you see down in this, supposed to be parking garage aren't usually turned off, which is really disappointing. If King's Dominion would start using that stuff again, I think this coaster may have been higher up on my list. Taking the number 5 spot is Grizzly. This coaster has improved so much over the past few years. The retrack was incredible. It made the coaster 10 times better at least. I mean, it went from one of the roughest coasters I've ever ridden to being the smoothest wooden coaster I've ever been on. That track is so nice now. I hope they finish redoing the rest of it because it really improved this coaster. I mean, without this would have been below Backlot probably, and maybe even Racer 75. It was nicknamed, I think they named it Grizzly because it felt like you were on the back of a Grizzly. It was rough. But this upgrade, this really helped it out. The coaster has been so much better since then. I'm really impressed in what they're doing, and I hope they put this much money and attention to all the other coasters in this park, because if they do that, this park will be so much better in the next few years. So I'm really excited to see what they keep doing. Taking the number 4 spot is Flight of Fear. This coaster is a top 5 coaster. It's a good first launch. It's suspenseful. It's got the best theming in the park. It's also the only indoor coaster in the park. I mean, it's an all-around good coaster. The only complaints I have is that the second half is slow. The trim brakes, in my opinion, slow it down too much. It feels like you're going to just stop, and I wish it was faster because it would make the second half way more tense. And also, over time, it has gotten a little rough and uncomfortable, but that's my only complaint. Taking the number 3 spot is Dominator. This is an overall great coaster. Other than the first vertical loop right before and the Cobra Roll, it's not rough at all. So for being a relocated coaster, it's still a great coaster and will not be needed to taken out anytime soon, which is good. King's Dominion got a great addition adding this to the park a couple years ago, and it definitely improved the lineup of the coasters at the park. Taking the number 2 spot is Twisted Timbers. The second newest addition to this park in RMC, Twisted Timbers is a world-class coaster. This is such a good coaster, and it is always so close ranking this with Intimidator 305 and Twisted Timbers. But Intimidator has always just been a little better, but that does not make this a lesser coaster. The 3 ejector airtime hills are so insane. The wonky turns it makes, RMC did such a good job making this coaster the best it could be. It is an honestly unbelievable coaster. Every time I get off this ride, I'm smiling because I don't know what the heck just happened. It's just so insane, I can't even put it into words. Some of the elements RMC have been able to put in their coasters is just unbelievable. The turns, the hills, everything, honestly. The barrel roll drop, it's just all unbelievable. Taking the number 1 spot, as I just said in my number 2 ranking, is Intimidator 305, or just recently renamed Project 305. This is the best coaster I've ever been on. And I've been to a lot of parks like Universal, Disney, Busch Gardens, Hershey Park, all of these parks, and this is still the number one coaster I've ever been on. And I think this will keep the number one ranking for me for a long time because this coaster is just so insane. Every element Intamin perfected this coaster. It is so perfect. The only slightly negative thing I have is the trim brakes right on that second airtime hill. It slows it down, but that's only for safety, so there too many G's aren't pulled. Other than that, everything is just absolutely perfect.